أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إن شاء الله once again السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. We'll start with the recitation from Ayah 19 and we'll try and cover 20 and 21 inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما كان الناس إلا أمة واحدة فاختلفوا ولولا كلمة سبقت من ربك لقضي بينهم فيما هم يختلفون ويقولون لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه فقل إنما الغيب لله إني معكم من المنتظرين وإذا أذقنا الناس رحمة من بعد والله يستتر إذا لهم منسين لهم منسين آياتنا وكل الله ورسوله إنا رسلنا يكتبون ما تمكرون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, we'll continue on reflections on the ayat of Surah Yunus. Again, the surah, the refresher of the surah, is one of the surahs that were revealed in Mecca. So it is dealing with the core principles of the belief before it came to the stage of the laws and the practical principles, how to live as a Muslim and acts of worship and how to be with others. All of this, though it is related to the principle of Tawheed and all stems from that. And we mentioned that last session that it is polytheism and shirk that leads to humanity coming up with laws that are oppressive or that are wronging someone, harming someone, favoring someone, like the animal farm the story of Animal Farm, George Orwell, that some of you may be familiar with that story, or even the movie that was made based on the story, which was based on the communist system, when they came up with some good theories and good principles, supposedly, to introduce equality in the society and so on. But then how they started tweaking the system to favor some rather than others, and became more like dictators. So he criticized them in a story, so he's not criticizing directly so that he doesn't get in trouble. And that's he made the story of the Animal Farm. So in one instance, he says, they had the first law, all animals are equal. But then he came up with another thing, adding to it, or they came up with, some leaders. He made them to be the pigs at the time. So the pigs were leading. And so they said, some are more equal than others. Some are more equal than others. How that works, I don't know. But again, people, when you leave them to themselves, systems that are man-made, or laws that are based on humans and their likings and their taste at the time, could be erroneous. However, godly system and a monotheistic system that recognizes God as the lawmaker is the perfect law for, or the perfect system for humanity. So essentially, the surah is confirming the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the revelation of the Holy Quran, and the messenger being a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and addressing those who deny that. Because initially, whenever we were celebrating the Mab'ath this week, whenever somebody comes and destroys their system, people's system, there's opposition. And so the opposition at the time did not like the fact that the Prophet is saying all of your idols are denied. When he said, La ilaha illallah, they said, Aja'al al-alihata ilahan wahidan. Did he make all the gods as one God? That was a problem. How dare he make all the gods as one God? When our fitra, insan's fitra, last night I was mentioning that today when we look at, and this is how, in fact, we are so blessed to be introduced to Islam, and to be introduced to monotheism, and to be introduced to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the mab'ath of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it is in line with our fitrah, with the natural instinct that's within us, that we know that there is one God. He is the most powerful one that we all turn to when we're in desperate times. Such a beautiful thing that we are given by being part of the believers and part of the Muslim nation, who acknowledges the Prophet's prophecy and the Quran being a book from God. When we look at other schools and other religions, rather, other groups of faith, some of them, or some cultures, maybe we can't even call them religions, some of them, some cultures, some cults, some rituals that are still practiced till this day and age in some parts of the world. Then you'll realize how blessed we are. The stories that they make up of gods that are this monkey god, to the elephant god, to this God who was in exile and then he was brought back. Another God was killed by the father God, and then all these stories that you tell it to a child, an innocent child who has not been poisoned, the mind of which has not been poisoned. They'll think, what stories are you telling me? Where did all this come from? So it is a big favor that we have the Tawheed introduced to us through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It goes well with us, and it opens the grounds for good practice. So if you see somebody in this world, as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Jew, as a monotheist, who is not practicing well, the treatment is fix their tawheed first. Oftentimes we think, we have to remind them of the law. Why aren't you praying? Why are you oppressing others? Why are you usurping other people's rights? We need to go back and fix their tawheed. That's why when we see a sinful person, you have to recognize them being as weak in their faith. There's life in their faith. This is why they're, especially sins that are not based on temptations. Okay, when certain desires, rather, in terms of urges. A young teenager has an urge to certain things, and as a result, he may look, that kind of thing. Yes, it still has that element of lack of recognition of God, observing and watching. Nevertheless, there is no the temptation, for instance, in mistreating another person and degrading them to a lower level of a human being, for example. When you see that, then you realize that their tawheed is lacking. They don't see God as one. The Creator is one. Al-Rabbu Wahid. The Lord is one. And the parents are one. The father is one. The mother is one. We all came from Adam ala nabina wa alayhi salam. Therefore, lacking in tawheed leads to problems in the society. Back to the last ayah that we covered before, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنفَعُهُم, and they consider their deities or their gods besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are their shufa'a. They know that God is the creator, but they have all these other gods for other things that will help them and intercede for them and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously denies them on every level, and He asks them, He tells the Prophet, قُلْ أَتُنَبِّئُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. You're telling God something He doesn't know? Because this is a confirmation of the Quran being from God, Him being a messenger of God, and a questioning of a law or a theory that they're making with no evidence. Bring us an evidence. If God had something that you are mentioning, partners and those shufa'a, idols who are intercessors, where is any text from God that these are? Previous messengers came, every one of them said one God. Every prophet and every righteous individual following the Prophet, Siddiqeen, and so on, they all said that there's one God. Where is this principle that you're coming up with? And it is based on a people who are worldly. The practice of these people. For example, Quran, whenever in the story of the man in Surah Yasin, the man who came to support the messengers, what did he say about the messengers? He says, وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. They listen to the people, اتَّبِعُوا مَنْ لَا يَسْأَلُكُمْ أَجْرًا وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. Follow a people who are not asking you for a reward, not like these temples and how they want you to bring sacrifices and so on. And they are themselves muhtadun. They are a kind of people who are guided. You see them and you realize that they're guided people. They're godly people. They're not a type of people who would oppress others, who would usurp other people's rights and so on. They're living a humble lifestyle. They're not worried about this dunya. This is a sign of them being truthful, or one of the signs of them being truthful. So that is denied. Next thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now turns towards people in general وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً, with regards to the belief and faith. Now, again, the ayat before went between some who believed, some who didn't believe, addressing those who deny the Quran and warning them, reminding those who accept of the good news, because there is bishara and there is indar, there is the good news and the warnings. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to all the people, and on a fitri level, on the level of one's creation, he is confirming that everyone was, all the people were on a fitri level of one belief, one nation. وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. There is another ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 213, I believe, in Surah Al-Baqarah, that addresses this issue elaborately, this issue of ummatan wahida, and how the division started. كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين, in that other ayah, that the people were one ummah. And there's a confusion about this ayah and this concept, وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً, and what does it mean? Does it suggest that ummatan wahida were all believers, and then through the message of the messengers they divided? Some do suggest that, by the way, that people, it is and they use that ayah, although they are not, what I'm saying by some, it's not some scholars. Here we're speaking of some ignorant ones who pick and choose in the Quran. They have a theory that their theory is religions divide the people. So then they come and recite this ayah for you and say, well, Quran says that people were one nation, and then فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ, that God sent the messengers and then people divided. So it's messengers divide the people. That is one, again, one suggestion which is completely against what the ayah and other ayat in the Holy Quran. So what is this ummatan wahida that people were? In this ayah, we're referring to one kind of ikhtilaf, and we'll come to that. On that other ayat, I just want to elaborate a little bit on the concept, and based on ayah 213 of Surah Al-Baqarah. In there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces people initially on a fitri level, the level of how they were created, pure mind, no reason to divide. They were one. Because on the level of fitra, as believers, as Muslims, especially followers of Ahlul Bayt, we believe everybody was born pure. Unlike the suggestions by other religious groups or other schools, that people are born sinners and they need a purification, therefore God sent his own son, or he himself manifested himself in a son. I don't know how it works, but essentially he had to sacrifice himself or his son in order for people to be forgiven. Again, some of these theories, if you tell it to a child who's innocent and who has not been poisoned, their mind has not been poisoned, they will tell you there's something wrong there. I mean, if people did the wrong thing, why would God's son purify them? They did the wrong thing. What does it have to do with God sacrificing himself or his son? Because there's a confusion amongst them, whether he was God or the son of God or both at the same time. I don't know. So that is one theory that some have. In Islam, we believe كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. Every child is born pure. God creates beauty, goodness. God does not create an insan who is evil by nature. who is without even doing anything, he's going to be evil. Within insan, there are tendencies, there are natural tendencies towards certain things that are part of his challenge in this world and part of the necessities of survival. So, for instance, love of oneself is important for one's health, for one's survival. It's important. If that is not purified and given some borders and limits, then it could lead to somebody having no regard of anyone else and reaching a level of declaring themselves as the core and the reason for the creation. Or even further, when they have that love of oneself and power that is above everyone else, like Fir'aun, he declares, I am your greatest God, he says, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. Why? Again, because he did not purify. So there are certain things within us that are good for us if we tame our nafs and make sure we put those things within the limits of what they are meant to do for us, then we're good. But if not, then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is essentially, he created goodness. Everyone was of that. Then there are two levels of ikhtilaf. One is on your own, you could be good. When does the challenge start? When you're living with someone else. There's another person. On your own, you're seeking survival. You eat what's good for you. You realize something's poisonous, you don't eat it, and so on. On your own, the fitra is beautiful. Those instincts are good for survival. Everything's good so far. But then you start living life and living with others, then there are things that you need to learn to avoid ikhtilaf, to avoid division and fights and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ. Because people, transactions, relationships, marriages, anything that they have with one another, they start having divisions and disagreements and fights and so on. And that is the first level of ikhtilaf. So they were one, and then they divided and differed because of their natural ways, how they are naturally. Okay? People are not created all of the same opinion, same intellectual level, same vision, same sight and vision being like one in terms of their mental and heart vision, and one being even their eyesight. Our eyesights are not the same. Our sensories are not the same. Different people have different level of sensories. Some are more sensitive to certain things, some are less sensitive to certain things. So therefore, when they see things, their perceptions are not the same. So divisions start, arguments start, fighting start. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Nabiyyin, the prophets, so that we don't have those differences. We have a unifying system. That's why monotheism is important. We have a unifying system. This is why a husband and wife, when they're getting married, if they want to avoid problems, the best way is to say, this is God's law. We will live by it. We live by God's law, then we're good. If we're going to live by man-made laws, we're going to have problems. In one part of the world, the woman has certain rights. In other parts of the world, women have other rights. In one part of the world, men have certain rights. In other parts of the world, men have other rights. And there would be clashing. What we see, how we perceive even those rights and laws that are made, man-made laws, and how we perceive them is different. And therefore, and some of them are oppressive in certain levels, and some of them are favoring one more than the other, and so on. So if we or if we don't have laws at all, or if you leave people to themselves, in some cases, in the history, for instance, historically, women were oppressed. And if we look at some of the ways they were perceived, it is shocking how some considered them to be, excuse the terms, like animals that were created, even some of those who believed in a creator, that were created for men's needs, for reproduction, for pleasure, whatever else. Some perceive them as that. Others perceive them differently, but a property, a possession of a man. Okay, part of the. You leave people to themselves. Others thought that they are some goddesses, okay, or they were created for sacrifice. There are still cultures that believe that they are created for sacrifice. Now, whether or not they practice it, I don't know, because most of the world now does not allow such practices. But there are some cultures or groups of faith, so to speak, that believe that they were created to be sacrificed. Okay, and they would bring some of them and sacrifice them for the gods, so that they get a good year and rain and whatever else. So again, leaving people to themselves, they would not only divide, they would create mischief, bloodshed. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ. There's a second level of deviation and division that the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah refers to, and here it's referred to. It seems like in this particular ayah, the second level is what is discussed, which is dividing after the religion. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah does speak about another level of dividing caused by so-called religious people, but not because God intended it that way or God trained them in that way. No, it's because of their own whims and desires. بغيا من عندهم ومن عند أنفسهم. It was their own. Baghi is when you want something, but it's normally it is in the context of you want something that is good for you, bad for the other. That is what it's normally used in the Quran. So bagha is to want. In Arabic, some dialects, for instance, in Arabia, they say abghi, I want. What do you, if you want to order something, abghi, I want. That is what it linguistically it means. But in the Quranic context, it's used often when one wants what is good for them, bad for the other. So this is why, for instance, in the context of the إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ أُخْوَةٌ, the believers being brothers, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if two groups of the believers, amongst the believers, are now fighting, then try to reconcile between them. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمْ. Then he says, فَإِنْ بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى. If one of them is now transgressive, is oppressive towards the other, okay, but the term used is baghat. Here, they want, basically, they are the ones who are instigating and initiating the problem because they want good for them, or good as in dunyawi good, worldly good, and bad for the other party. If that's the case, then you fight the one who is being oppressive until it comes back to the command of God. حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إلى أمر الله. And that's basically the main application of one of the earliest applications was the group of Muawiyah and his people. The Prophet ﷺ told Ammar that you will be killed by al-firqatul baghiyah. You will be killed by the transgressive group, the oppressive and transgressive group. And Ammar was killed in the Battle of Siffin when he was with Imam Ali alayhi salam against Muawiyah and his people. And so actually the death of Ammar created some confusion for some who were with Muawiyah, because they had heard of the status of Ammar and now they heard that he was killed. Nevertheless, they solved it. Amr ibn al-As and his people, they solved the situation. They said Imam Ali is the one who killed him because he brought him to the war. If he didn't bring him with him, he wouldn't have died. So he was the one who killed him, not us. In any case, so they're, politicians, they're very good at twisting things. They do that. They've done that for centuries and they continue to do that nowadays as well. To try and basically pollute the minds and divert the attention towards them as the oppressive, and make the other party be the oppressive. In any case, so Baghi is the referred in these ayat is a desire within them to be in a position and power, wanting wealth, wanting territory, whatever it is they want for themselves. And therefore, in order to make themselves in power and in charge, they have to make themselves be the right party, the party who is on the right. Now we're speaking of divisions after the religion. So there is the division that occurred before that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the messengers to fix that problem. There is another division now occurring through the religious groups. And it's very important to understand this because it is very often that we find divisions amongst the believers. We find the great example is what happened right after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it was basically the one party was gaining power before the appointment or before people came to Imam Ali alayhi salam and begged him to be their Khalifa. Before that occurred, from the first Khalifa the time of the first Khalifa onwards, it was basically cooking. These wars were cooking. It was not that Imam Ali alayhi salam came and all of a sudden all these wars happened. He sat behind so that no war occurs. He did not want to fight. Abu Sufyan told him, give me your hand, I will give you my bay'ah and I'll fill the city of Medina with an army for you. I still have connections. People still respect me, or some, and therefore I can bring an army for you. The Imam says, I don't need your bay'ah. I don't need it. So the goal was not to lead the people, but others, that was their goal. Baghyan baynahum. Others, that's their goal. They want to be in charge. They want to have the power. They want to have money. Again, money is often the issue because through power, they can have more resources, money, and so on. So they appointed the people they wanted, and the people they wanted started becoming richer. Now, all of a sudden, you have this situation where some people are in extreme poverty in the Muslim Ummah, and others have become extremely rich and building castles and so on. And so those who wanted that kind of lifestyle went towards Sham. In fact, as soon as Imam Ali alayhi salam was declared as the Khalifa, he declared that I will take the money that was taken from the Baytul Mal, from the treasury, in terms of wrongly and wrongfully, I will bring it back. And so they ran to Muawiyah. They camped already with Muawiyah. And again, the killing of Uthman did not happen except that people were fed up with inequality and so on. And that's all within the what? Within the Muslim Ummah, within the believers. All of this. The killing of Uthman, believers. Wars after that, at the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, all the believers are fighting. Why? What is the situation? بغيا بينهم. Some have baghi, that they want for themselves. They don't care of anyone else, of anything else. They want for themselves. And because of that, people are dividing. So what this ayah, coming back, وَمَا كَانَ النَّاسُ إِلَّا أُمَّةً واحدة فاختلفوا. The people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them one, ummah wahid, one. But they divided. Divided based on what? Divided again based on their wants, their desires, whether it be before their religion, because they want their way, favoring themselves. This is why the element of sacrifice changes the situation. If you want a successful marriage, you have to sacrifice. Without sacrifice, you cannot have a successful marriage. Without sacrifice, you cannot have successful families. Without sacrifice, you cannot have successful communities. If everybody's looking out for themselves, if everybody wants to favor themselves, what's in it for me? That question itself is a problem. What's in it for me? If everybody's concerned about me, there's going to be a problem. And therefore, we have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the messengers to teach us to be more sacrificing, more giving, more caring, more loving, forgiving. Not only sacrifice, but also forgive. He wronged me. That's a good reason for shaitan to tell me, don't sacrifice anything for them. But if I forgive them, then I can still sacrifice for them. In marital relationships, when one feels wronged, they don't want to do anything to sacrifice. A lover sacrifices, yeah. But when they're wronged, I'm not going to sacrifice. But what if you forgive? Then forgiving means that wrong is gone. Then you're able to sacrifice again. Out of love, you sacrifice. And so this is how people end up being until the religion. وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ فِيمَا فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. If it was not for a decree from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it was not for a decision that was made at the formative level of the creation, sabaqat, it was before all of this, these divisions. If it was not for that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have dealt with. Qudiya is from qada, it's to judge. But it also refers to something being over, finished. Okay? قضي الأمر الذي, in Surah Yusuf, he tells the prisoners that the matter that you are asking, فيه تستفتيان, the matter that you're asking about is now finished. I told you what it is. I explained to you, and it's finished. This is what it is. So when something's finished is also referred to as qada. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have judged and finished it. This is why it's qada. Qada is referred to as qada, judgment. It's because it is finalized. It is done. It's a done deal. So he would have finished. How? Basically, though the qada would mean that he would make the right party victorious and destroy the other party. That is what it would suggest, the ayah would suggest, and that is what the Day of Judgment is all about. The Day of Judgment is about, and this is why in dunya we tell people that there is a day of judgment. Now you're oppressing me here, you're harming here, you're killing, you're doing this, you're doing that here. There's a day of judgment. Why? On the day of judgment, those who did wrong others and harm others and kill others and oppress others and whatever else, they will be dealt with, perish, sent to their basically payment where they pay off everything, and the good ones are given their gardens and paradise and so on. So if it was not for the fact that God had already decreed on the formative level of the creation of this world, that people will get their chance in this world, that good and bad will get their chance in this world, and that in this world it is not sin is not punished immediately. This is the testing platform, not the judgment day and the reward and punishment day. Therefore, if it wasn't for that, then already here everybody would have seen it. This is an amazing way of reminding people of the day of judgment. Because when somebody is wronging others, if I'm doing the wrong thing by someone else, and they say to me, they answer with this very issue, that had it not been for God decreeing that in this world you will get your chance and your time, God would have dealt with you right now. What is it telling them? It's telling me that watch out, there is a day of judgment. At that point, there is the qada is going to happen, and whatever you deserve, you will get it. So within the answer to those who wonder and they say, okay, why is it that if what you're saying is right, if you're a messenger of God and you're the good people and we're the bad people and we're doing the wrong thing by God and we're denying his book, denying his people, oppressing, why is it that he's not doing anything to us? This is why they frequently would say to the Prophet, متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين? When is the promise, day of judgment? When bring it on. That's how daring. Bring it on. Bring the punishment. So the response to that mentality is given in this ayah. At the same time, a reminder of the day of judgment, that there is a time, there will come a time that you will be judged and you will be given what you deserve. God decreed, kalimatun sabaqat. God had already decided in the creation of this world that there will be time, everybody will be given the time, and if it had not been for that, they would have seen their punishment immediately. فيما فيه يختلفون. Amazingly, you'll see the ikhtilaf in this ayah twice. فاختلفوا and يختلفون in the end, division and basically fights and or quarreling and so on. And in the other ayah, in Surah Al-Baqarah, it is mentioned 3 times. الاختلاف. And so perhaps because this one is referring to ikhtilaf after the religion, the division after the religion, and the other one is referring to also the ikhtilaf before. Now you might say, well, the prophets were, we as believers, we believe that Nabiullah Adam was the very first prophet. So that ikhtilaf before the religion may not make sense to some. How does it work? The religion came first. God did not leave people with that. No, it's referring to the fact that as people became in need, and this is an amazing thing about the Mab'ath, as people became in need of new systems or new laws because of the new systems that they are introduced to through life and the advancement of life, then God sent new messengers to explain those things to them and teach them how to deal with those things. For instance, if it was at the time of Nabiullah Adam, and people came and asked, and Nabiullah Adam was to teach the people about the economic systems, for example, khums and zakat, okay, and or some of the social laws between the people, and all the ayat that we have about how to deal with people of different color and different cities, where the ayah says, for example, in Surah Al-Hujurat, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from a male and a female, and He made us into tribes and civilizations, or into branches, tribes and branches, شعوبا وقبائل, or branches and tribes, لتعارفوا. It would not make any sense for somebody who is the first family in this world. Where are these شعوبا وقبائل, and how are we going to deal with these people? And if the Prophet was to come and tell them, these are the laws regarding marriage from a different tribe, from encouraging them to marry and not to be, none of these would have made any sense. Economic systems, social systems, and so on. So as people advanced, the system also advanced, and the prophets would come to give them laws about these divisions that are created as a result of the advancements that they are not familiar with how to deal with it, and so on. So this is the ikhtilaf on that level, and with the prophets, ikhtilaf being removed, and then people dividing after that, again, based on their own whims and desires, based on their own, basically favoring themselves, benefiting themselves, and harming others. And then, وَيَقُولُونَ لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes back to the people who are denying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, they say, now another argument, they say, if God sent an ayah to him, a sign, ayatun min rabbih. There are different suggestions about this sign. Some they say, no, this is about the ayat of the Holy Quran. It seems like it's not, because that was their previous argument when they said, ائت بقرآن غير هذا أو بدله. Bring another Quran or change this Quran. Either bring another one or change it, take away the things that are offensive to us, and so on. So this was a previous argument. Now a new argument is given. What is this new argument? وَيَقُولُونَ لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Why is it not that he comes, or why doesn't God send down to him a sign? So what are they referring to? Here could be a sign as the signs of previous messengers, like the staff of Musa alayhi salam. You know, that's a sign, that's a miracle. In the Quran, miracles are referred to as sign. Tis'a ayat. Musa had 9 ayat, 9 signs, 9 miracles that he brought to the people, the Pharaoh and his people. So here it could be a miracle that he would have some sort of an obvious miracle that we can see. Or it could be a miracle that through it he could actually show them that he can win against his enemy. Okay, especially this part. That, okay, you're a messenger of God, and some people are harming you, throwing stones at you. Why can't you do something? Okay, if you have a connection with God, why aren't you able to block these people? Put some sort of a barrier. Okay, so like the modern day movies, they have good, based on the imagination, they have good depictions of some of those possibilities. and they make it scientifically possible. Some of them, they even bring a scientific name for it and so on. In any case, why can he not have a sign that's brought down clear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ayatun min Rabbih. So he says, فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, tell these people, فَقُلْ. Now, I want you to pay attention as we are going through these ayat, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala switches between third person and second person. Okay? Here, the addressee is his messenger. They are the third person. وَيَقُولُونَ. They say, لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ. فَقُلْ. Say, Ya Rasulullah, now you speak to them, and they are here ignored as a almost you don't deserve to be addressed directly. فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. The addressee here is them, but the one speaking is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and God is telling him, tell these people, answer them. Now we'll come to this in the next ayah in terms of the changing of the second person versus the third person, al-ghaib and al-mukhatab, as we refer to in Arabic. However, in the response here, he says, tell them, إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ. Ghaib, they ask the Prophet in other ayat about the Day of Judgment. When is the Day of Judgment? He answers, God tells him to answer that this is from Ghaib. This is Ghaib from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not something that I've been given. I cannot answer that because this is part of Ghaib. Here, the Ghaibiyat, any kind of the help from the unseen, basically miracles from God helping them, the destruction of a people, for example. Why aren't we being destroyed? If we are being oppressive to you and you're the messenger of God and we're denying you, why isn't he destroying us? And the previous ayah says, وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. So he says to them, yes, people divide and fight. Previous nations, they did. And God allowed the people. It doesn't mean that the wrong ones were good. And there came a time where they were punished. Okay? They were given time. It doesn't mean that it's always the Day of Judgment. Sometimes when they overdo it, in this world, there are some traditions, godly traditions, sunan. In this world, when you oppress beyond a limit that God has set for this world, he destroys. That is a possibility. And therefore, وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. Previous nations divided, and God gave time. However, when came the time, he destroyed, he finished the bad, the evil, and saved the good ones. We know that through, you people know that through all these nations that you speak of, you know of. Okay? In other ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, look at the people of Hud, look at the people of Salih, look at the people of Lut, they're not far from you. وَمَا قَوْمُ لُوطٍ مِنْكُمْ بِبَعِيدٍ. They're not far from you. Far as in distance of time or distance of place. It could be one or the other, or it could be both of them. It is suggested that they were in today's Jordan, in a city in today's Jordan, not too far from Arabia. So that could be the reason why they are not far from you, or even time-wise. In any case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the qada will come. جرى القضاء. When the qada comes, it will come. But I don't, the Prophet, he's saying, it's not in my hand. فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ. Ghaib belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How he deals with you people, he knows. When he decides that he will make the believers as victorious and destroy the oppressors, he knows it's not in my hand. Wa'ad, the promise, God's promise, is going to happen when it's not in my hand. فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ فَانْتَظِرُوا. So this لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِ آيَةٌ is probably more towards some sort of a miracle that gives him power against his people. That they see that, for instance, a punishment is coming to them. For example, at the time of Nabiullah Yunus, and we're in this surah of Nabiullah Yunus, yes? At their time, people saw clouds coming and strong wind and clouds coming to their city after Yunus alayhi salam left. He left angry with the people. ذهب مغاضبا. Yeah? He was angry with them. They did not listen. They did not pay heed to any of the reminders and warnings. And so he left. After he left, the people watched the signs. Okay? The signs were coming to them. They became fearful. They said, what if this is true? Because some nations before them, when they saw a cloud coming, they said, oh, it's just a rain that's gonna rain on us. This is in the Holy Quran. But that was their adab, and that was their punishment. It was their basic ending of that nation. So the people of Yunus learned from previous lessons, previous nations, and they thought, what if this is the punishment? What do we do? The signs came. So, and collectively they went and prayed and desperately asked for forgiveness, and God removed the punishment after it was imminent, it was coming. He removed it. So, in this case, they're saying, where is the sign? وَيَقُولُونَ لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ. So the response, فَقُلْ إِنَّمَا الْغَيْبُ لِلَّهِ. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not. I don't decide when. I don't choose. And when it comes, you may or may not have time to change or to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. You wait and we wait. Now this is an amazing way of a prophetic way. A prophet of God is not in a hurry. Okay? The response is not, I am praying that it happens soon. The response is not, I will pray. Now that you are asking for it, you're asking for it, huh? You're daring me? Okay, I'm going to ask for God to bring it on. No. You wait, and I am also waiting. فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ. Here, it's a warning for them. I'm waiting for it, meaning it is going to happen. I'm waiting for it. Yeah. Another one. I am not in a hurry. I don't have to ask God to make something happen quicker because He knows best. It's in His ghaib. He knows best. He knows when it's the right time. So I leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we can learn this lesson, that whenever we want something, whatever it is, leave it and leave the time to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Condition your du'as. I often tell people, if it's best for me, pray for me. I'm trying to get this, pass this test, get this house, get this project, whatever it is. I tell them, I'll pray for what's best. If it's best for you. Maybe it's not best for you. Don't condition things. When I want it now. This thing, what do you want? Whatever it is, when do you want it? Now. Us humans, now. Everything now. Yeah? No. Leave it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God knows when is the best time. فَانْتَظِرُوا إني معكم من المنتظرين. Your intidar is dangerous. My intidar is beautiful. Your waiting is very dangerous. You're waiting, you're not accepting God's message. You're not accepting the messenger. You're not paying heed to the reminders. You're not being warned against the warnings. If it comes, what are you going to do then? At that point, we will be happy, the believers. وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ بِنَصْرِ اللَّهِ. On that day, the believers will be happy that God brought his support and help and the victory to the believers. What are you going to do that at that point, if that it comes? So فَانْتَظِرُوا إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُنْتَظِرِينَ is not necessarily telling them wait and do nothing. It's actually another warning, but very gentle. I'm waiting, I know that it's going to happen. I am waiting for it, therefore I know it's going to happen. So that was the response that he gave them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the next ayah, ayah 21, he says, وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً, general rule here, whenever we let the people taste a mercy from us. Here, this mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to what they would consider as goodness, happiness. Opposite to darra. It comes afterwards, darra. So we have sarra and we have darra. In the dua we say, Ya Allah, make us amongst those who remember you and thank you in both sarra and darra. Sarra is what makes us masroor, happy. Darra is what harms us, makes us unhappy. In both situations, make us grateful and thankful and praise you in all situations. في السراء والضراء في الشدة والرخاء. Different situations in life, we ask you to make us amongst the believers who are grateful to you and are not questioning and so on. So here, whenever they are given a taste, not even the full course, a taste of a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here it is referred to as a mercy because sarra is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anytime that we're given any goodness, it is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody really deserves it. Nobody can say, I deserved it, except the arrogant ones. Qarun says, Utituhu ala ilmin indi. I am given all this wealth because I am good, I am knowledgeable, I have the knowledge, I deserve it. I'm paraphrasing here. Or in Surah Al-Kahf, the non-believer, there were the two men. One of them had a farm, it was beautiful, it was surrounded with palm trees and had all sorts of trees growing in it, fruit trees growing in it and vegetables. And he had a river in between those gardens and so on. And then he says to his friend that I have more children, I have more money than you and all of that. Eventually, he says, even if I'm returned to my Lord, if there is a day of judgment and I'm returned to my Lord, I will be favored just like I'm favored here. No, this is a mercy from your Lord. You don't deserve it. It's not like you deserved it here, therefore you will deserve it over there. It is a test, and through his mercy, he's given you this. Act well, use it well, so it will be a mercy for you. Otherwise, it will be nothing but a wrath. The opposite of when you're not grateful, it turns into adab. وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. It's a wrath from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever people are given a taste, and here a taste is perhaps suggesting that it's not even the full dose of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's obvious because we know that in this world it's only going to be a taste. The real goodness is in akhirah. Nevertheless, if it happens after a darra, so This is a reminder of the fact that you people went through difficulties, and those difficulties were assigned from God. You just didn't see it. You didn't recognize it. They're asking for a sign, yeah? They're saying, لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه. And he's saying, I wait and you wait. But he's reminding them, God is reminding us, and obviously them directly, everybody included, depends on which group we belong to. Everybody's reminded that we often go through tough times in life. And those tough times are reminders. And then afterwards, God gives us some ease. And when we go through tough times, we turn to Him. Oftentimes, people turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially when they're in a desperate time where nobody can help them. No one in this world can help them. This is why Imam Sadiq alayhi salam gave the example of someone in the ship who is in a storm happens and no one can help him. Okay, no insan, no human can help him. What do they do at that point? He asked that man, does your heart at that point cling into something that is more powerful than this world that could save you? He said, yes. He said, that's God. Everyone in this world, when they go through those tough times and they're desperate, they know that God is there. They know that there is a power, whatever they want to call it, above all, that could save them. And so they would turn to Him, and then He gives them a mercy. He blesses them. He saves them, gives them happiness, sarra. What happens when they receive that sarra? وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً مِّن بَعْدِ ضَرَّاءَ مَسَّتْهُمْ إِذَا لَهُمْ مَكْرٌ فِي آيَاتٍ. Then they have makr about our signs. They're asking for a sign. That was a sign of God, and this is a sign. The sarra is a sign, and the darra. They had a darra. They had a bad time. Now they received a good time. And now they are doing makr about it. What is makr? Makr is deception, plotting, planning deceptively. This is why some people, when it comes to the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهِ, they don't know how to translate the second one. Because, okay, they're yamkurun, we understand, they're bad people, they plot and plan in their ways and deceptively, or secretively, okay, rather secretively. Okay, makr here, secretively. Like in their mind, they have something, and they're saying something else for a plot that they have, okay, or they're twisting it in a way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His makr, because He has a plan, and they don't know about His plan. And His makr is so well that their plan becomes part of His plan. Their planning becomes part of their plan. Here, it's the same concept we're reminded of, that they have makr about the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What their plan is, they say the rahmah that happened because we deserved it. The darra was because of the Prophet, him being amongst us. And this is what previous nations did. This is an example of their makr about the ayat, twisting the ayat to favor their ways. That, you see, what happened was not a punishment for us, a sign for us, a reminder for us. No, it's because the Prophet was amongst us. There was a people of Ras that they had a tree that they worshipped, and they took branches to their villages and their homes. And when the tree dried, the big tree that they considered as the big god, when the tree died, they actually ended up killing their prophet, because they said, you are, and that's why they're referred to as Ashabul Ras, like they put they buried him alive, basically, put him under the ground and buried him in a way that they could hear him. The Imam Ali alayhi salam narrates this hadith, that they could hear his voice and him calling for help until he passed. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed their villages, their city and their villages. And their thing was, why did they kill him when the tree died? The God is angry with you. You disrespected God so much that God is angry with you. The punishment because of, and then in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about when they see good and bad. Okay? And when they see good, they say this is from us. Okay? Or sorry, they see good, they say this is from God. They see bad, they say this is from you. Who? Referring to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initially says, كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ قُلْ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to good, it's from God, as in that He initiates good and everything is good from Him. And when it's bad, it's because of your own actions. Yes, it is from God, as in He allowed it as part of His, the way He gave this world certain laws. The good is from Him, the bad is a reaction to your actions. The bad is a consequence of your actions. ما أصابك من حسنة فمن الله وما أصابك من سيئة فمن نفسك. It's from your own self. Or in another ayah, فبما كسبت أيديكم. It is but from your own earnings, what your hands earned for yourselves. So here they try and twist the ayat, and the sign comes. They plan in a way and they plot in a way that they make it favor them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلِ اللَّهُ أَسْرَعُ مَكْرًا. God is faster in His plan. Here meaning what? Before you even planned, He planned. Your plan became part of His plan. You're twisting it in a way that became part of what He has already decreed on the formative level of the creation. He's already decided that. And so it's not something that's hidden from Him. And even that, He will basically, in His plan, He will give you the answer to and the lesson through it in a way that your plan is destroyed. People will see that what you tried to twist to favor you and to justify your positions was falsehood. Inna rusulana yaktubuna ma tamkurun. And a reminder that our messengers, here referring to the angels perhaps, that are recording everything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already planned before this. قُلِ اللَّهُ أَسْرَعُ مَكْرًا. And the last part is saying it's being recorded. That's part of the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that everything is being recorded. So you're only harming yourselves, essentially. If you're changing it and twisting it, God knows it. He has an angel assigned to write it. Therefore, you're only harming yourself. Your plan turns against you, no one else. Whether it be through another sign that this time there's no mercy after it, or no chance after it rather, or on the day of judgment. Either way, whether it be something to basically finish it off and deal with it in this world, or in the hereafter, regardless, this is going. The angels are recording it. It is recorded against you. You know, if somebody walks into an office and is basically abusing the people in the office, and then he or she starts, they often refer to the Karens. If it's a Karen walking into an office and starts creating a scene and wants to make a lawsuit, yeah? And then they say, look, you see the corner? That's a camera recording everything. What happens to that person? Okay. Whatever they were trying to do, slip and fall, hurt themselves. Oh, they abused me. Why are you abusing me? And create a scene, whatever it is. Okay. Next thing is, look, there's a camera there. What happens then? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Inna Rusulana yaktubuna ma tamkurun. Our angels are writing. Yeah. So in our fitra, we know that there are angels. In our fitra, we know that God is watching. This is in our fitra. This is a reminder on a fitri level. God is speaking to their fitra, to their natural instinct that has been put in them at the time of the creation. So he is reminding them, Inna Rusulana yaktubuna ma tamkurun, and a reminder of their makr. It's repeated. إذا لهم مكر في آياتنا قل الله أسرع مكرا إن رسلنا يكتبون ما تمكرون. It's being written what you are doing as the dairy plan, if you want. تمكرون in this case. They're writing it. So it's a great reminder on a fitri level. Also, يكتبون as in what? Writing it in this way. There's another suggestion. Although you might say, okay, it's writing it. Okay? But there's another ayah in the Quran that tells us that they are taking a copy of it. يستنسخون, like a copy. Here it says yaktubun. Some of our scholars suggest that this yaktubun is basically, it's the implementation of the written fact that these people are just following it's not that they're forced to, but this is something that it was expected of someone on that level of disbelief and on that level of denial. And what the angels will actually take is the image that stays in this world, in this cone, in this universe. An image, the nasakh that Quran refers to, istinsakh rather, that Quran refers to. So actually their action, it's almost like the camera thing, but not a camera that takes an image of it. It's the real thing that stays in the universe. And so on the Day of Judgment, people see their actions present. وَوَجَدُوا مَا عَمِلُوا حَاضِرًا. They find what they did present. Almost like watching themselves, watching it live, not a video of it, not an image of it. God's system is, if human beings are capable of coming up with holograms and through it, recording things live and then putting it on a hologram in the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can't he make you watch it itself? If we speak of, the travel in time, time machine and travel in time, if you go back, you watch it live, yeah? Would you watch something else or you watch it, itself? You watch itself, you watch you. You see you watch you, exactly what happened there. And so in Rasulana yaktubuna ma tamkurun is not suggesting it's just a written thing. Okay. It is your actions, exactly what you're doing is actually being recorded against you if you are, inshallah, for us and not against us. But if one is denying, if one is plotting, if one is misinterpreting for their own benefits the words of God and the signs of God that are around us, then the angels are taking a full image of that, the real image of that these people will be faced with. If there are questions. or comments? We'll take a break for that. Yeah.
So with regards to division in the Shi'i Ummah, right now there is a system and assumption that you are the most knowledgeable
Yeah.
in the way of knowledge scholars. And it's panned out that you only have one or two.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, there may be a situation where you have half a dozen. You can't identify one or two. There's
Yeah.
half a dozen.
Yeah.
And then you have a situation where there's a bit of mayhem, confusion, in a situation of division.
Yeah.
Even though it's warranted, because there are 6 islands, just by nature of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for us in case something like this does?
Yes. It has happened in the past, and now some people do suggest that there are more. So it doesn't have to be necessarily one or two, although it is possible to have one or two. In some cases, we had one in the history of the Islamic seminary, Shia Islamic seminary. And we've had times that there were multiple. And at the time, earlier on, there were many more. Okay, if we go back at a time where there was less connection between all the Shia in the world, each area had their own marja, so to speak, that people went back to. That is not necessarily a cause of a problem. This is not the division we're speaking of. The division we're speaking of is based on ikhtilaf, division that is based on baghi, one's wishes and whims and desires, causing them to make decisions to favor them against others. We don't have that in our maraja, okay, or great maraja, okay. In our great maraja today and in the past, we've never had such a situation where, and people identify those people and they exclude them. Okay, whenever something like that comes up, believers and good people, they identify that this individual is trying to just benefit themselves, trying to exclude others and discard and disqualify everybody else. Obviously, they have an agenda. It's not genuinely for the sake of God. They see those signs in them and they discard them. And it's happened in the past. There were a few here and there that very early on, either within the Islamic seminary they get discarded, or people will eventually discard them. And what remains for the people are the names of the great ones, which we have today of the previous maraja, throughout the history, names of great individuals and great scholars. And today we have the same situations. If we look at the number of maraja today, we have many maraja. Okay, a dozen would be an understatement. Okay, we have maybe if we look at everyone in different cities and different areas and so on, we might have 100 or 200. Okay, some of them small circle. He announces his marja'iyya and a small circle of people are following him. Others are more followed in terms of worldwide, and some of them are known in the media and so on. Some of them are not so famous or known and so on. We, amongst all of them, we have very little issues. We only have a problem when one of them is the type that is acting. Obviously, it is obvious that they're acting to favor themselves against everybody else. There's baghi there. Okay, baghyan bainahum. It is one of them, for example, a video or an audio recording came out from one, and then later on he denied it, that he said this was played with, and then later other things came out, and was obvious that if that was not true, it was not far from false. If some things were changed in that particular recording, it was not far from what he believes. And what does he believe? He believes that he knows it all and everybody else doesn't know anything. He attacks, for example, in that recording Atlas Sistani, and he says, what has he given to the world? What has he produced? And look at me and what I have produced. Okay, and then he starts stating all the things that he has done. And so when he hears something like this, you realize that there's an agenda. Unfortunately, some people fall for these people and follow them. He has followers, okay, and his videos get circulated. Even with some translations, sometimes people send me translations of some of his, video with the subtitles in English, and they're sharing it about some of the things that he has said. One of the younger reverts in this community sent me once a video and said, what does this guy say? So I had to clarify that, be careful. Not everyone who looks like a great individual, Quran speaks about those people, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُم وَإِن يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ Surah Al-Munafiqun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells his messenger, when you see them, they look very good. And when you listen to them, you like what they're saying. Okay, so even the Prophet is told, you will like what you see and you will like what you hear from these people. But they are hypocrites, munafiqin. Now this individual, I would, at this level, I'm comfortable to say it's knowingly, not unknowingly, he is creating a problem and division. That is the ikhtilaf. And it is based on an agenda that he has. Nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes them. Then these ayat are very clear. قُلِ اللَّهُ أَسْرَعُ مَكْرًا. And people, the believers, the good ones, know. They see it, they understand. Immediately, they can recognize falsehood from truthfulness. And they would describe him. And those who follow him are actually following him because they are looking for that kind of, basically it suits them. Okay, they are looking for misguidance, or they are misguided and they're looking for a proof, and that suits them. Okay, he's saying that, there you go, I'm good. So a justification of their misguidance. So they're not looking for guidance, they just want to justify their own misguidance, so they follow him. And but they will, with time, they will be exposed, and what benefits people will remain. And that's been the case always. So as long as the one people are following does not have an agenda, we have, like, I remember I went and visited one of the Maraja, who's passed away now, in Mashhad. And he had some followers, not a great number of followers, some followers, in line with everyone else. The teachings are the same, very, very small differences. If we look at Al-Maraja, small differences. Even some people make it a big deal. Oh, day of Eid is different. So what? It's not a big difference either. Okay, that is not the big difference. Is if on the basic principles that make us who we are and identifies us from our enemy, they start giving us controversies and falsehood in that sense, to the point that this individual is now questioning the birth of our Imam, and whether the Imam is our present Imam, whether he was ever born, or it doesn't matter if he's born or not born. Okay, he says, we don't have a proof that he was born. Okay. So when something like this happened, this is a principle. We are a 12er. Okay, come and tell me there's only 11. And why? Because it doesn't make sense to him, because it's hard for him to believe. I'm sorry, I follow the Quran. Quran tells me that Nabiullah Nuh alayhi salam, he invited his people for 950 years. Invited his people before the Tufan, before the flood. So after the flood, how long did he live? Did he die immediately after the flood? No, he lived a while. How long? We don't know. There are differences of opinion. The minimum that is recorded for him is 1500 years as in life, the minimum. And there are records of 2500 years in total that he lived. So he lived 500 before the Tufan, and then the 950 or 500 before messenger. That's a suggestion. And 950 as a messenger for the people before the flood, and some 1,000 or something after the flood. So in total, about 2,500 years. There are narrations that suggest that, but put all the narrations aside. 950 was the minimum. So is it possible for a human to live 950 years? If Quran says yes, then it is. Okay, so if the life of the Imam is the issue, we have a proof from the Quran. Hidden is the issue, we have a proof from the Quran. Living amongst the people without people recognizing him, we have a proof from the Quran. Al-Khidr lives amongst the people. He used to come and see people. But people normally wouldn't recognize him unless someone knows. The Prophet once, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, told the people, the person who came and asked me questions, they said yes. He said this was Al-Khidr. This was Al-Khidr. So we have proofs from the Quran, yet this guy has an issue with it, for example. And other issues, this is one of the issues, but this to me is the furthest, okay, about the way we look at the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about many things. So when people come up with such controversies and they start spreading falsehood that is completely against our principles, that's when we realize that there's a problem. Or if somebody says that there is no unity amongst the Muslims, okay, that this guy has an agenda. Oh, there is no unity. We cannot unite with these people. Says who? Imam Ali alayhi salam could. You could not. He could with their leaders. Okay, this guy calls them the Bakris and the Umaris and whatever, and he says we cannot unite with them. Imam Ali alayhi salam could be there and advise them. No, not their followers, the leaders themselves. Abu Bakr and Umar. Imam Ali alayhi salam advised them how to lead the ummah and how to avoid certain problems and so on. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt advised some of the Khulafa of Bani al-Abbas. Bani al-Abbas, the ones who killed the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. If I'm not mistaken, at the time of Imam Hadi alayhi salam, the Imam solved a financial problem, crisis that the Romans were trying to impose on the Muslim ummah. And the Imam advised his enemy, his hands were dirty with the blood of the Imam's children. Okay, mutawakkil. And the Imams advised these people at that level because they knew that this is for the better good, for the greater good. And yet so when you hear falsehood, it's recognizable, and we should be able to see it, recognize it, and oppose it, discard it, and it will go, inshallah. Sure.
I do understand that the extent and timing of Azan is in the sole knowledge of Allah. When there is a mass wrongdoing, what would be the red lines that will be crossed before Adhan comes into effect?
That's something that realistically he knows, because sometimes we think this is too much, and we have in Dua al-Faraj, we say وَضَاقَتِ الْأَرْضُ وَمِنَعَتِ السَّمَاءِ. There's so much mischief happening, okay? And إلهي عظم البلاء وبرح الخفاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء. So much mischief is happening. وإليك المشتكى. We only complain to you, Ya Allah. And so in that dua, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the faraj of the Imam Ajalallah ta'ala faraj of Sharif, because with that is the faraj of the relief for all the believers, all the good ones. And the description given in the dua has happened at times where people collectively would read this dua and would be in tadarru, in extreme humbleness and tears, okay, humbling themselves and in tears, crying that this is too much, too bad. Especially on the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Throughout the history, they have been persecuted, killed, and so on, in ways that we would think that this is it. You know, that's enough. Enough is enough. When is, and Quran tells us that it gets to a point where the messenger and the people say, Mata Nasrullah. Zulzilu, they were shaken to a point that the believers and the messenger said, when is the help and aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Mata Nasrullah? And the answer is, it's near. How? We don't know. We always say it's near. إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. They see it far, we see it near. But when is near, we don't have a time. What is the limit? God knows. Bani Israel, they faced a lot of oppression from Pharaoh and his people. When after Nabiullah Yusuf ala nabina wa alayhi salam brought them to Egypt, initially they were in high positions, very powerful. Okay, he was the Aziz, and the king was favoring them. They were educated, they were the believers versus a bunch of non-believers at the time. And the king became a believer at the time. But after that king, historians suggest that in their narrations that things started turning against them. So the temple and the idol worshippers regained power, and the next king was no longer favoring them. Eventually, they became slaves. They went from being masters in that city to being the slaves, because they're the foreigners, they're not the locals, and they're the opposition to the system that they used to have, the idols in the systems. So it's hard for people for societies to get rid of their idols, whatever that idol might be. And so they became slaves, and they were oppressed to the point that it was a decision the king would make. Every child born this year would be killed. Every boy, every child, boy born this year will be killed. And they had no choice. Midwives would be waiting. This lady is pregnant, waiting. Bring him out, kill, throw. This was in the river. And they had nothing to do about it. I mean, if we look at today and what's happening today, we think this is too much. Nothing compared to what happened then. Literally, there's no ifs and buts, there's no question. The king fears that a boy will be born and will destroy his kingdom. Therefore, every boy will be killed. Okay, every year, no, we need some slaves. So he asks his, basically the fortune tellers, Munajjimi, when is it going to happen, in an odd year or an even year? So they give him an indication. I can't remember now, it was odd or even. So every second year, it became every second year. So every second year, a boy is born, killed. There's thousands and thousands of children. For how long? We don't know. Even after Musa alayhi salam came back, after he came as a messenger to the people, he was born, he grew up in the house of Pharaoh, and the tradition is continuous. He doesn't know that he's born. It's not like it stopped. This is what the tradition is continuous. Musa alayhi salam is born. He doesn't know. He's growing in the house of Pharaoh. Yeah. He was born in the year that he was expected, but The situation in the story of Quran is clear. So they continued to oppress them. Then he went to Madian, the incident that occurred, and he went. He came back. According to riwayat, after he came back, it took 40 years before they were saved. They, in the Quran, it says, Udina, we were harmed. The Bani Israel said to Musa alayhi salam, you're a messenger of God. You came to save us. We were harmed before you and after you. Quran is clear on that. Udina min qabl, before you and after you came. We're still harmed. Okay. How long? So narrations say 40 years it took. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually gave them sign, tisa ayat. 9 signs, 9 clear signs were given to them. They still denied, ended up drowning, destroyed, and the believers were saved. So we don't know, we just always say, we pray and say it's near. And that's what Musa alayhi salam said to his people, that you rely on God and be patient. Rely on God and be patient. Wasbiru. And he will save us, inshallah. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.